Thank you all for tuning in to episode 14. This is Barrett here to get things popping off for us today. Josh is out ill this week, so we will be inviting our friend again, Mr. Ridge Jackson, back to the show as my co-host this week. Episode 14 welcomes Zach Biri of Enemy Airship. Zach is the lead singer, guitar player, songwriter, and engineer for Enemy Airship. Enemy Airship hails from St. Louis, Missouri by way of the mineral area. To begin our conversation today, we will touch on Zach's background, what began Zach's interest in music, his inspirations, bands that he's been in over the years, and when he began to develop his love and fascination for the production and engineering side of his musical compositions. We also talk the early maturations of Enemy Airship and all these experiences leading to today. We'll be discussing the recent new singles debuted by Enemy Airship, the critical acclaim and attention they are seeing, and their forthcoming album containing these singles. Enemy Airship's sound excels beyond the usual labels of their contemporaries. Enemy Airship creates a sound that is atmospheric yet tightly coiled, its guitars and synths bleeding together to hint at garage rock and indie pop as well as new wave and experimental tones without ever picking a side, as quoted from Eric Danielson of the Columbia Daily Tribune. Please give a warm welcome to our guest this week, my good friend, Zach Biri of Enemy Airship. Oh, and here's Ridge too.
Jamie.
So Jamie here,
Yeah.
with Zach Biri of
Hello.
Enemy Airship. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah.
Wanted to bring you on the show and talk about all the amazing things that Enemy Airship's got going on, but kind of wanted to start off with my first memories of meeting you and becoming your friend.
Oh, damn.
And those are always interesting tales to tell.
Going way back.
Yeah, going back, I'd say it was like 07 or 08, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, in that neighborhood, and we would all get together and watch fucked up movies, typically.
Yeah.
I
Well,
remember watching Hellraiser 2 with you.
someone would.
Gentleman Broncos. You forget the Gentleman Broncos experience?
Oh,
I watched it
Yeah.
exactly one time, and
That was the occasion I was like, this guy's my friend now.
it messed my brain up a little bit. Yeah.
And it was because there was an excessive amount of lotion being put on the skin, and that's
Yeah.
what did it for you.
It was a lot of like, I feel like that movie was just a collection of a bunch of people's Manchurian triggers.
Yeah.
Like things that just don't happen out,
Right.
naturally. And
Right.
so it's not
Yeah.
going to go off by accident.
I believe like within a week, we probably watched Hellraiser 2 as well. And when it opens up with the man with the chains in his face, it
Sure.
says that Jesus wept and he just ripped apart Zach, was like, all right, guys, I'll see you later. I'm out.
Well, and then in short order, Antichrist we watched
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
That was
Antichrist as well was obviously, I happen to enjoy the film for the sacrilegious aspects of it alone, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But yes, it's extremely desensitizing and was kind of all of our go-to. Like, hey, you want to watch a fuck up movie? Watch this. You know, if we were recommending something to somebody.
I don't know if this is just my bad memory, but it seems like that was right before streaming was like Netflix was still a thing you did in the mail, and so it was also like the heyday of torrenting.
Yes,
piracy.
To piracy, and the Netflix mail-in service was hot and heavy. I had a subscription. That's typically how we got to watch a lot of stuff. But then the online streaming for the consoles started to come online. So like I had an Xbox 360 strictly for streaming. Like I never played any games on it.
I just remember getting a pass the popcorn invite for Brandon, and then it was on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brandon worked at movie stores for the longest time as well. So like we were always picking stuff out, kind of obscure to watch. Then I came to know, and I couldn't even tell you the specific experience or instance, but somebody like mentioned to me like, oh, Zach plays music. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And did never hear anything. But then whenever finally, I believe it was probably non-returner at the time.
Yeah.
You did some type of performance up in Columbia that was recorded.
I think we also, again, my memory is really bad. So like the order of things is really fuzzy, but I think we played at Barbarino's around that time too.
Yeah.
With,
probably a little bit after that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all very hazy.
Maybe Firebird Suite.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Mike McClanahan and Calvin.
I think that was like right around the time that we released a record too. Like it was the only full length record we released. So it was like, well, so this was 2008 whenever that came out. And I was like that. Logan and I got evicted from our house for not paying the rent.
I remember that now.
And then I was in Farmington for a while, just
I'm not thinking back far enough.
Being depressed and like just absolutely just drunk. Just drowning my sorrows.
Was that your eating copious amount of cheese stage?
I'm sure that happened in there too. I just have
it's all a blur.
I have a vivid memory of, and I don't know how it's a vivid memory considering the amount that I was drinking at the time, but I was like eating microwave crab rangoons at 4 a.m, and I was just like, man, I think I've hit rock bottom.
Yeah, kind of had that existential crisis at that time.
It's like one of the most vivid memories that I have. Sadly, and then I didn't stop drinking for years after that.
Yeah.
But that was the time when I was like, this is gonna kill me. I need to get this shit under control.
Then eventually,
these crab rangoons are trash, and I've eaten the whole box.
Yeah.
In like 3, going back and just getting.
Yeah.
It was fucked up.
I've had countless of those experiences. I know that once I first heard your music, I was like, holy shit, I did not expect. I couldn't tell you what I expected, but I didn't expect what I heard, and I loved it instantly. You and Michael and Logan have a chemistry, and kind of, I would liken it to like me and Ridge, for example. And we got Ridge on the show today too, stepping in. So sorry for the delayed intro there, but
need an intro.
But Ridge and I have kind of that same thing going on. It's like we basically always ended up in bands together, playing together, and like we don't have to even tell each other what comes next. We often find it at the same time. Like that type of chemistry can't be manufactured.
I think like maybe you can work at it with people, but there's also just like the natural chemistry that you have with other musicians, where you can kind of either anticipate what they'll do, or like you're just kind of like tuned into the same wavelength, and that's with Michael and Logan. It's definitely like most of our communication is nonverbal in practice, and we just kind of vibe. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that you and Logan and Michael all went to school together in like Farmington, right?
Yeah.
And so that's probably where y'all initially met and became friends and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I've known Michael my whole life. His mom and my mom were friends. I think like his mom was the head or just part of I'm going to fuck this up pronouncing. It was like a breastfeeding advocate group or something. And cool. I don't know if my mom was also like involved in that, but this is a very weird story to be talking about on a podcast. But anyways, they were friends. And so like whenever I was born, it was just like, well,
Yeah, there you go.
These kids will hang out with each other.
Yeah, so literally your entire life.
Yeah, for sure.
No question.
And then Logan, since like maybe elementary school or something.
Yeah.
I didn't play music with Logan until after high school, but like him and Michael were in a band together in high school, and I would like hang around their practices because, I think they were using something of mine, or
Did you have any of your own bands in high school?
Yeah, I was in a band with a terrible name, but we were all right. It was like me and my friend Zach and my friend Chuck and my friend Chris, and it's
well, what got you interested in being in a band? I mean, you've had a fascination with music, and then I know that you've played. We've talked before, but you were like in marching band on drumline, right?
Yeah.
So like you've got some different experiences behind different instruments too.
So whenever I was a kid, my dad, a sound person for a couple of different bands, and at one point, whenever I was really little, we had bands practicing in our basement. So, and I remember like, again, hazy, terrible memory, but I just remember it being like super loud in my house, and I'm just like up in my room and I can hear this shit coming up through the floor. And so I was just around it a lot as a kid. I think I like watched my sister was in marching band, and I watched like the drum line, and I was like, holy fuck, this is cool. Yeah, I want to be in the battery. And so whenever I was in like 6th grade, I like joined the band and got the song flute, and I was like, all of this is in preparation for me to be in the marching battery. Like I was hell bent on it. Whenever I was like a freshman in high school though, like Zach, the drummer for the band I was in high school, he was also in the drum line, and then Chuck was also in the drum line. And so like during breaks from marching band, we would go to, it was my house for a little bit. And then I think maybe my mom was like, this is too loud or whatever. And then, but Zach lived way out in the country. So we went out and we would like practice, or just jam during like breaks from these like brutal 8 or 10 hour band camp, like just standing out in the sun all day, lobster red, and then we go and practice in the basement in the air conditioner and stuff. And I don't know, I'm rambling.
That's
so
no. I
little
never
memory
really got
lane.
back in there in those memories with you before. So, but I also kind of wanted to hear how you and Logan and Michael in particular started playing music together. So you guys were always around each other really in your school years.
Yeah, for sure. And then like around that time, like Michael and Logan were playing. Name of their band was. It was probably also very embarrassing, but
we've got plenty of them. We can share all kinds of embarrassing names from us. Me and Ridge.
Oh no, let's not do it. No. I'm glad we didn't have social media back then.
Or didn't use it well enough. We'll put it that way.
The thing is, like, I owned a web domain. Like, it was the 90s or the early 2000s, and my family was like, my dad was a big nerd, and so he bought like a web domain. So like I definitely was putting things on the internet that are still on archive.org, and like you can go and find these pages where it was like pre-blogger even, and I'm just like going in and making a new HTML file for every time I'm making a post, and I'm posting on the internet, and people, it's
that's
like
crazy.
But how, I don't know, how like narcissistic and like weird exhibitionism for like a teenage boy who thinks like zero profound things, just like making, dictionary length posts.
Do you remember what they were ever about in particular?
I'm sure it was just nonsense, just navel gazing bullshit, which, set the tone for the rest of my output for the rest, lots
So when you started playing in bands, there had to be some inspirations for you musically bands that you were really into, like a lot of bands, they start out with kids learning an instrument because of a band or a particular musician, learning those songs. And then sometimes you get together with friends and jam those. And then that turns into original songs.
So with guitar, my dad passed away when I was 13, and he had a Telecaster, and I decided like, I'm going to have to learn how to play this, because like I don't want it to just sit there. And I had like this little blues cube, like a Roland blues cube amp, about this size. Sorry, I'm pointing at a Super Champ. And I was just like kind of learning to read tabs or whatever.
Sure.
What a 13-year-old boy would do. So I'm looking up Foo Fighters songs and slowly learning to, play power chords and shit. And so most of my like drive to even play the guitar was like, I just don't want my dad's guitar. It was some kind of like, I need to do something with this because like, I don't know. I don't know how to unpack that,
Yeah.
But
no, I get it.
But and then I would just start playing songs that I liked, and then as I would play music, my taste was sort of informed by like, oh, now I'm listening to these parts, and now I'm listening to the way that they work together, and now I'm noodling around on the guitar, and I'm thinking more about this stuff, and then and so I don't know. It wasn't so much that I wanted to like play songs that I knew or like there was any kind of band I was like, I want to do that. Although I'm sure there was some amount of like, I want to play Everlong and
right.
I don't want to fuck it up and I want it to sound good. But a lot of it was just like, I want to get good at guitar and then I want to, and then I started like listening to music like a person who writes music starts to listen to things.
Right.
So.
The age that we all are too as well. It was kind of different, your access to music back then. So unless you had like, your opinions and experiences were basically informed by like what your parents liked or your friends at school exposed you to.
Right.
Like I know I went to Arcadia Valley, Ridge went to Bellevue. Like it was particularly in those early, grade school, middle school years, like unless you had a friend that listened to the Misfits, maybe you never heard of the Misfits or the Ramones or bands like that. What you heard was what was on the radio. And so technology has really changed people's ability to listen to anything at any time too.
For sure. I mean, whenever I was first learning to play guitar too, like I think probably my favorite band was Deftones, which I still love Deftones.
Me too.
But at the time, like, and to think like the kind of music that I make now. And I was, at the time I was like, I'd like to learn some of these songs. I don't have enough strings on the guitar for that.
No, you gotta have at least 7 that I'm aware of.
I don't know. I mean, it was like, that was about as fringe as it got. And that shit was played on the radio. But I mean, like I did get on, like there was Forum, maybe this was even later, but so I had access to like FTP sites that would just have like MP3s on them in like whole discographies and stuff. Yeah. So I would go on there, and then of course there was like SoulSeek and things like that. Right. And then I think that it felt like that kind of blew shit wide open because I remember around the time that Napster and like SoulSeek, and then like Michael's finding, like Rites of Spring shit, and and then somebody's burning me a Braid CD, and it was like, oh, suddenly the world is so much bigger now than this like tiny little cluster of shit that I know of because it was on 105.7 The Point, or I heard it on oldies radio. Right.
Well, another thing that kind of famously happened with some of those, file sharing proxies that you're talking about, like, so for example, you would download a song and it would be labeled as something, but then it would be something else too. Sometimes you'd find that out, and sometimes it was very comical. Like it would be like, I don't know, like the audio from a porn of people like just it's going at it incessantly. I
downloaded so many Radiohead and Smashing Pumpkins collaborations, which now like the thought of it is like, well, should have known better. But at the time I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Right. It's totally reasonable that I would have never heard of this before and found it on Napster. Sure.
And then sometimes though that leads you to finding some other things that you like. So that was some of my accidental finds personally. I know like I can remember 2 big things, at least in my time, and it overlaps some with Ridge. Like most of my experiences were that until we didn't even have internet that we could download anything in my house until I was like 17, 18 maybe. Yeah. So I was very late to a lot of things, but I remember kind of 2 bigger things that happened was my ability to download music, and then secondly, Marcus Newstead coming down to Michael's house and ripping his iPod onto that computer. And we found so much new music whenever that happened. And kind of, that was close to the time that me and Rich started becoming good friends too and stuff. And he was already listening to stuff I'd never heard and so on and so forth. So, you know, that's what kind of helped open me up. And then I ended up playing in hardcore bands and things that I didn't even know what hardcore was, you know. I got asked to come play bass, and Michael's like, hey, it's a hardcore band, and you could play these bass parts, they're not hard, and so on and so forth. I'm like, okay.
You got that one hit,
right?
You know, from the iPod, and then suddenly you're manufacturing it.
Exactly. So he comes over and shows me all the parts, and then I end up playing with Ridge and Garrett Gasson and Michael Jones in a hardcore band, straight edge hardcore band. Yes. Matt Link too. I can't forget Matt Link. He was there at the time. Yeah. So, but yeah, straight edge hardcore band is how I started, and the last band we were in was nothing like that. It's a party band.
The very first band that I was ever in, I actually was the drummer, and it was a metal band.
Yeah.
Well, first two bands, I was a drummer. And I mean, I was fucking terrible. I'm sure the bands were probably not great, but, and yeah, I don't know. These are buried deep.
You start to repress them over time.
It was, so the very first band that I was ever in, and actually the very first show I was in, a friend of mine was like, hey, do you think you could come to practice and just sit in on drums? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm 14 years old, and I don't know most of these people, and I'm like an anxious, you know,
that's
kind of rattlesnakey guy.
Yeah.
And then I go there, and they're like, play these songs, and I'm playing them, and it's fine. It's like, I'm not a good drummer, but I can get through a song or two. And then they're like, all right, everybody pack up your stuff. We have to get to the show. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Shit, dude.
We go to a, there was a church that was behind Dairy Queen in Farmington, and we go there. I don't know if it's still, probably not. It's like where the family center is.
Yeah.
There was a church on the hill there, and it was in that church, and we played like a metal set, and it was like like at a youth group thing, and I was so
taken back by the whole thing.
That set the precedent for what I do at shows, which is just completely dissociate. I leave my body because I'm so scared, and then it's probably fine. I don't know. I've never been there.
Yeah, you know? I hear you. There's definitely an element that goes on. Like, I know I dealt with that really bad, specifically in high school. My dad would like make me do things to like get over it. Like he started like making me call businesses in a phone book.
Goddamn.
And just ask them random things.
I'd throw up if you made me do that today.
Like the first two or three times, there was definitely some of that like dry heaving and stuff. I was just so like worked up about it. And then eventually it gave me the ability to talk to anybody about anything. Mm-hmm. So I guess it was a good thing. But like the anxiety that I went through was terrible. Like I lied to my parents one time that I was going to stay a night at a friend's house, and I went and pulled up to this party because this girl I had a crush on was a guy at the party. And I wanted to go in so bad, but the anxiety of just getting it out of my car, I could not do it, you know?
Yeah.
Which is wild because that's not at all who I am today, though.
Sure.
In some respects. I mean, there's a little part of that in there still, but
exposure therapy is either traumatic and like fucks you up forever or it's just the trick.
Well, I forever I thought it was just the trick, but I've had some issues bubble up from that in recent years as well. So I can't say that it is necessarily being somebody through that experience. I can function more than some people and many things, but it's just by natural reaction of it happening to me previously. I just know what to do, been there, done that sort of thing.
For sure.
So it's like, let's replicate that again.
Yeah.
It took me 30 minutes to like pep talk myself up to call somebody to come out and look at my HVAC.
Yeah.
Damn.
It does. It happens. Yeah.
Like, is there a way I can put in like a service ticket to get somebody
online?
No.
So
I gotta call them.
Michael just bought a house. Every time they talk about like we had to call a guy to do something, I was just like, man, I'm just gonna rent forever. I can't do this shit.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
That's the reason I did.
It's also crazy expensive. Like I never thought I would be at a point in my life where I care about this or know what the word means.
Right.
Although maybe that's sad, but like I'm not building equity. I've never built equity. I don't have any of that shit. But then, and I'm like, man,
you're fluid.
I really should maybe just buy a house, even if I know I'm going to move in like 5 years, just buy it, pay some shit, get some equity.
People do it all the time.
Sure. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Even if you don't plan on doing it, a lot of people live somewhere for a couple of years and leave. And like, I mean, I don't know how I would ever buy a house, but counterpoint, like all this shit that fucks up, you have to fix it, and I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility.
No, not at all. Earlier you mentioned that your dad ran sound for bands, so I think that's kind of interesting, kind of knowing, like, I think the rest of my crew, our band, we really started a bond with you too whenever we would come up and record with you.
Yeah.
Specifically, you know, and that started off a more deep-seated friendship. It like things went to a different level once that started going on. So I think perhaps maybe some of your dad's experience, like being the sound guy for bands, maybe got your interest in the production side of things. Is that, would you say that?
Well, and so there, at a certain point, I was trying to figure out how to record like guitar parts or song ideas, or just record myself so I could listen back and see, like, does this sound okay? And it was right around the time I started playing the guitar, and I was using like a computer microphone in front of the amp. And of course that sounded like a nightmare.
Sure.
But then like we got a 4-track player, we borrowed a 4-track player, and then we were just like, everyone in my band in high school was like passing around this 4-track, kind of learning how to use it, but we didn't know, you know, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
I think, you know, the internet was less of a, I'm sure there was some kind of like tutorial out there on the internet, like a how-to guide. We didn't know where it was. It was not as easy to find.
Right. Things like that was usually found in message boards back in the day.
Sure. Like Alta Vista wasn't crawling those message boards. But so it was kind of like a thing I dabbled in. And then at a certain point I decided like, oh, I want to get better at this, even if only so that I don't have to rely on somebody else to record me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to, how do I put this? I have like trust issues with like, here's the thing that's in my head and it's a fully formed idea. And I want it to be this way. And if I can figure out how to get that result, then I don't want somebody
else to manipulate it.
Or just have it be a game of telephone, which is not to say that like anytime I've recorded with somebody that it is like that. Usually, you know, you back out of the situation if you don't have chemistry with the person who's recording you, because it's like, oh, this is going to be fucked up, or it's going to be like
a cold process,
their idea of what your band sounds like. And unless that's like what
Steve Albini treatment,
unless that's what you're thinking, or if that's like an interesting version of it that you want to see through, then like you back out. But still, like I just, you know, and this is a super toxic thing about me, but like I am like a control freak, and it has to be like a certain way. And I've like crippling perfectionism, which is why this record has taken so fucking long. Anytime anyone gets involved with me, it's like, yeah, I recorded with Zach last weekend. We were talking about like maybe putting it out in 3 months, and like 2 fucking years go by.
Yeah.
And you've got, the end result will usually be okay or pretty good or something, but like I just cannot let it out of my grasp until it's like
where it needs to be.
Yeah, sure. Well, and it's like some of this stuff is like ritual that probably makes no difference on how it sounds. It's a bad situation. The inner world is a nightmare. You know?
I get kind of Brian Wilson-esque sometimes whenever I'm just even demoing stuff. You know, it's like especially whenever you start doing we'll call it the car test, but you take whatever you comprise to a car, listen to it.
Yeah.
Then you got to hear it with headphones, and you got to hear it on your computer monitors, and then you want to hear it on a Bluetooth speaker, and then you want to hear it in all these versions. And often, yes, you can pick out different things through those experiences, so that will lead you back to going back and tinkering with the knobs.
That's that is the part about audio that is like the most maddening thing to me, because with visual arts, you see it. It is there.
Right.
It's apparent. You know, there are things like, you know, if you're the screen you're looking at maybe is like producing the colors correctly, but the amount that like the thing you're listening on and the room you're listening in, and then maybe even your own hearing,
absolutely,
can color the sound and make a mix sound different from one place to the next, is maddening. And it's like what I found, just, and I'm not, you know, handing down knowledge from on high here. I get by with recording and mixing and stuff. Like it's a thing that I do because I have to do it. But
well,
like,
you do a damn good job, regardless of what you're saying right now.
What I've realized is too, it's not like I'm going for this thing and I do it and it's that. It's like I'm trying to triangulate between this thing I'm hearing here under these circumstances, this thing I'm hearing here under these circumstances. And then you're just trying to like mentally split the difference and find a point in the middle where you think it's like where it's supposed to be. And I think if I would have known that starting out, that it would be doing this kind of thing, running around in circles, you know, buying things to listen to, treating rooms, I would have never, ever done this. We should not tell kids about this.
Oh, I know.
That
I know.
Your life as someone who cares about audio and recording and engineering is just going to be nothing but misery.
Yeah. Well, and those close to you in some occasions, I know I was probably driving Pam nuts, like whenever I was demoing some stuff. And then even sometimes with the podcast, when I'm mixing, she knows the process because she knows how much time I spend on it, but she'll come in and even watch me. She's like, what are you doing there? And then she'll see me like cut out an audio clip and somebody going, or whatever the case is. And she's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that there's so much that goes into that.
Right.
And then even whenever you splice it, it doesn't necessarily sound cohesive. So then you have to work in that context as well. So then sometimes you're making sacrifices that you don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's there's a lot of like monotonous stuff that I think at a certain threshold of like prestige you don't have to do anymore. Like I don't think like bigger producers do their own editing, for instance, but like
for sure,
I'm one guy, and so like I record myself or I record somebody else, I'm the one who has to go in and like find every time you breathed and either cut it out or drop it 9 decibels, depending on like what we're going for there. And it's like the first time I had to do it was a Meyer Giants record. And I remember thinking the reason that I have to do this is because I fucked up so badly recording this that I'm picking all this up. And then I find out that like, this is just part of the process. I'm like, this is what you've resigned to doing when you record. And that's fine. There's a lot of tedium involved. I think the better that your workflow is, so that you like, if you can get momentum and do these things fast or almost like automatically, and if you can automate it, great. Finding a way to not have monotony completely shut the whole process down, or make it so that there's so much entropy that you lose the creative spark or like lose the magic is just, it's such a weird balancing act. And I feel like every year I think, finally I figured it out. And everything that I did before this was trash. And I'm going to go back and remix and master all of the things I've ever done. I'll never find the time to do any of that.
It's like the Louis C.K. move. Like, you forget the bit you did last year. You're starting a whole new bit.
Well, but then like the next year, I'm like, everything that I did last year was fucking trash. And now I finally, and so, I mean, for real this time though, everything that I did before is trash. I finally figured it out. And the Enemy Airship album actually is coming out this year with even if it fucking kills me. I have to get this record out. Yeah. You know, I was thinking about some of these songs were supposed to be on our, I think, second album. Some of these songs predate songs on our second album. They were, I think, written around the time of our first EP. I think Ben was still in the band whenever some of the songs on this record, like Magnetic Light, the first single we put out, whenever that song was like written, Ben was still in the band, which it was, I mean, it's 10 years ago. Jesus Christ. Like I need to pass this stone and just get it out of my way. The other thing is like, I've started making songwriting a practice, like a thing that I don't just do whenever the mood suits me. I think whenever I was like just drinking all the time, it was like whenever the right combination of coming out of a hangover or like getting drunk or all the, I'm waiting for my sails to catch this prime brain chemistry cocktail so that I can write a song so that I'll be inspired to. And you can wait around for that shit, but your output will be abysmal and it will be not very often. I mean, that's not true. That's not true all of the time for everyone. It's kind of certainly true for me.
Yeah. That's kind of the theory behind Another Round. Mads Mikkelsen, that movie. Have you ever seen that? The Danish movie where they all have to drink and what they're drinking to a certain level, and the idea is it's your maximum output as a human being because all of your anxieties are out of the way, that, the other thing. It's a theory that you have to maintain a certain level of blood alcohol content, so all these teachers take a pact to do it.
Yeah. And
their relationships start to deteriorate and stuff because they slowly slip into alcoholism.
I mean, that sounds fun as hell. Well, but I've tried to like make it like a thing that I practice. Like every day, whether I want to or not, I'll play a little, I'll write a little. And so as I've, worked on this over the years and kind of made my space more conducive to just like being in the zone immediately when I make the time to do it, I've been writing a lot more and writing better songs than most of the stuff that we're putting out on this record. And so now like we, as a band, like and then I'll bring it to band practice, or we'll like jam out like just a riff or something. And at this point there's like another album and a half of Enemy Airship songs that are just like backing up behind this constipation of 10-year-old songs. And it's like, what is this ever going to come out? I'm probably going to like get in a horrific car accident before any of this shit ever comes out. And someone's going to go through my voice memos and they're going to find just a couple solid gold hits. And then they're going to find some like
questionable things.
No, they're just going to find me like every dumb thought that crosses my mind. I'll record it, and I found a voice memo the other day where I was like, why does Brazil get the cool space flag? And it's like, who did I make this for? Who did I think was going to hear this and be like, yeah, why did Brazil get the cool space flag? What the fuck is this?
You're slowly writing yourself a bit to be played in your final days.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that is the other motivation of getting this out. Over the last couple of years, we've lost some greats, and apparently like Prince has like just an archive of shit that Prince didn't think was good enough to put out. But
Eddie Van Halen too.
But it's all like just the best shit ever. Yeah. For anyone else, it would be like career defining, and he was just like, this doesn't meet my standards.
Right.
And then after he's dead, someone's going through it. And look, I'm not entertaining any delusions of like, even like 3 or 4 people giving a shit, but I don't want like my family to be digging through stuff and be like, man, this song fucking sucks, that they hear in my voice memos because I didn't like get the thing that I polished out. I don't know. I just don't want to leave behind a bunch of voice memos that never got to fly. Yeah.
Another interesting thing too, you're talking about kind of the older songs. So as Enemy Airship, you covered a non-returner song too.
Yeah.
So it's you revisiting that material too, and fleshing it out further.
Sure. And that one was like non-returner. When we recorded that the first time was a 3-piece, and then it was we did it again, and it was a 4-piece with like Mike on guitar and John Paul on bass. And then like we just played it in practice a lot, and Michael just made up a new bass part because he didn't know what John Paul was playing, and then we kind of changed it a little, and then we decided let's
sounded better that way.
Record it. I don't know if it sounded better, but it was like what we were doing at the time, and so it seemed like we should record it. And there have been a few times where we will be in practice and we'll like play a non-returner song, except that it's different because like I had a whole keyboard and beats rig, and then Michael was on a different instrument entirely. But it's kind of fun to go back and be a little revisionist of your musical output. I actually, speaking of which, and since you guys are here, a couple of years ago I was like, man, I am a terrible engineer and I need to go back and remaster all of the Meyer Giants records. And so I started to, and honestly, that shit sounded really good. And then I just like never went back to it. Someday it's coming. I promise. Wink, wink, wink. Don't trust the word that I'm saying. But no, I mean, the takes and like the performances there are fucking awesome. And I just like was listening to it on completely just ass circumstances and trying to get some, and anyway, I'm sorry that I did such a fucked up job on this.
No. We enjoy, like, that was the best experience I'll say ever had recording with anybody. That's like anytime we even though it never happened, whenever we had some material to go back and record again, it's like, we were kind of getting to those stages. It's like, we need to get with Zach. And
we definitely had a good time. There's
lots of good times.
Some of the photo evidence I look at and I start getting like a pain in my liver. The one of the picnic table that's got like 300 or 400 beers, and that was the first night. Like, no wonder I feel like shit all the time. I'm rotting on the inside.
And there was like 40s mixed in there. And
it was a rough
time. It makes me
time.
sad and kind of depressed.
It's amazing that we got the performances that we did, though. Out of that. I can't believe you guys could play through that. I know that I did spend some of the tracking laying on the ground, trying not to vomit, and then did vomit.
I remember we went out somewhere or whatever and came back completely shit-faced after like drinking.
That was the first EP. We went to Broadway Brewery for like a Sunday or Saturday brunch and drank like 3 or 4 Bloody Marys apiece. And then went back and recorded. I sound like a real piece of shit on your podcast describing my past consumption habits.
We all had some pretty bad experiences.
I mean, I'm a boy from St. Francis County in my mid-30s. I definitely had a nightmare drinking phase.
Oh yeah, for sure. We all have, and it was funny how quickly we would do that stuff too with you. You know, the first time we went up was essentially a 24-hour period or so. Mm-hmm. I think we came up late on one night and stayed an entire night the following night, perhaps. And then we made more of a 3-day weekend out of it. Mm-hmm. The second time that we went up there, but
I think we did 4, didn't we?
Well, we did it. We drove back. We came back to do some finishing work too.
Yeah,
on both occasions, I think.
There was like the bedrock tracks on the first EP, which I think it was like 2 audio interfaces like daisy chained together, and not in a way that they were intended to be, but in like the most bullshit, fucked up way. I think there is a computer microphone on that EP, but you know, live and learn. The next one I had much better stuff, and it sounded much better. But we got the bedrock tracks down, and then you came up to do guitar overdubs once. Everyone came up for that, I think. Yeah. And then Jake came up by himself once to do vocals. And the funny thing is, like, me and Jake are good friends. Yeah. Jake comes up to record Dire Babe stuff with me all the time. Yeah. Very comfortable being like alone with Jake. We hang out. Right. We have intimate conversations with each other.
Where's this leading to?
Whenever Jake came up to record vocals, I'd never been alone with him before, and I knew him the least, and I was like, I don't know about this guy. I'm a little bit scared that Jake is, and of course it was like wonderful, you hang out with him for the first time, being like, oh, I love this guy, he's great. Funny thing is, I'm pretty sure that Jake and I are like cousins a couple times removed, we figured out.
Oh, really?
Off of Ancestry.com.
Oh, my God.
So my mom's maiden name is Lawrence.
Okay.
And I was like, I wonder if that's a thing. And my sister has an Ancestry.com account, and she's like big into genealogy. And so I started digging around and found a common ancestor. So that's wild. Cousin Jake.
Yeah, there you go. Now it's Cousin Jake.
But anyways, I was afraid he was going to be a real weirdo whenever he came up to do overdubs. And
he's a weirdo, just in a way that,
but in a way that is compatible with my own weirdness.
Yeah, for sure. We're all quirky dudes in that way,
for sure.
I also want to kind of talk to you about how you ended up in Columbia. I believe you went there on scholarship, right, initially?
Yeah. So I was a band kid, but I was in Theater Guild, and there was a musical whenever I was a junior, maybe a sophomore in high school, and I tried out for it, and I sang like in a band in public on a PA system that made it sound like a CB radio. Yeah. Couldn't really hear my voice so well. Right. I tried out for a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, and the choir teacher was like, oh, you have a really good voice. You should join these various choirs in high school. And so I did, and I got really into that. Loved singing choir, I regret deeply that I am not a religious man, because I would love to be in a church choir. I would love to just be in a choir and have someone like run warm-ups on me every couple days, because like I do it myself, but I need somebody to be there.
Yeah, kind of push you.
Yeah, make me go for the high notes and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so I got really into choir and applied for, or I auditioned for a choir scholarship at Mizzou, and at first I was going to go to Webster to do audio engineering, and then I made the awesome decision to follow my friends to a school I didn't want to go to and get a major that I was not all that interested in getting. And so I decided to go to Mizzou instead. And I did get the choir scholarship. So I was up there for a semester. Crippling anxiety took over.
Yeah.
I got a credit card for the first time in my life and immediately went to Walmart and got a GameCube and like a bunch of games, Wavebird controller. I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
I just had a credit card.
Right.
And they gave it to me.
Right.
And so I majored that semester in Metroid Prime and Super Monkey Ball as my minor. And then they kicked me out of school for not going to class. And that was the start of my my troubled career in academia. I did finish a degree eventually many years later.
Yeah.
After racking up tens of thousands of dollars in student debt, but so all my friends were up there. I played in a couple of bands during that semester, and Michael stayed up there, never moved. My friend Zach was playing drums in the band with me whenever I was up there. He still lived up there, and so I was just thinking like, I'm back in Farmington again. I'm taking a year off, just whatever. Hanging out at Plank Road Inn, getting jacked up on coffee. And then I'm going to try to go back to school, but eventually I got to get back to Columbia to be in a band because,
right.
Just I'm going for that dead end future as like a regional musician. And so it was always like the idea that I'm going to get back there, but I was like, I'm going to go to Webster and get an audio engineering degree that'll never get me a job anywhere, so that I can record this band that I intend to be in when I move back to Columbia and just, I guess, be put in debtor's prison or something.
Yeah.
But, so it was always like the goal to get back there, to get back to Michael and Zach. And it was the first time, like, Farmington and sort of the Farmington area had music and bands,
right?
But it was not a lot. And it was like absolutely nothing like I was playing. It was a lot of metal. It was a lot of like harder music. I didn't feel like this was a place where that was very friendly to the kind of stuff that I was making or wanted to make. So moving to Columbia for the first time in that first semester and going to like house shows and stuff and seeing these bands, like, this is something that I could see myself, I could see making this kind of music or these people at least being in the orbit of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, like, there was a house show. This is like completely anecdotal, but there's like a house show that I went to, and one of Justin Nardi's bands, I think it was like Carry On Kill Away, played and the floor fucking collapsed. I don't know.
Wow.
And that's when I knew that I needed to be a part of it.
That's awesome.
For real though, like seeing that stuff kind of made me feel like this is a thing I could belong to.
Yes.
I don't really know anything about sports. I'm not like a dude in a way that I can hang out with other dudes without being really weird or having to like tone match with dudes in a way.
Right.
But this is a way where I could be around other creative people that are maybe kind of, fucked up in the same way that I am, or like at least I have something in common with. And so like it was this weird, almost self-destructive impulse to get back to Columbia no matter what. Right. And it brought me back there several times before like I made it work, and then started to think like, oh, I actually could record again instead of it's this thing I put away.
Right.
Now I'm going to try it again. And it was actually with you guys the first time I tried it again.
Yeah.
And from the stuff I learned from that, like, oh, I need to get a couple of these things. I need a couple more channels to get a good drum sound. I need a couple more mics. And then I recorded Smithereens, the second Enemy Airship thing. And then with the stuff I learned from that, I recorded the one with you guys.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, it's just been like, this is a thing that I do, but like I hung up recording for a long, long time. It was like a thing I was going to school for and like considered it to be like a big part of my life. And then I was just like, a discouraging failure shut the whole thing down or something. I don't know. And I just like,
you just kind of got in your own head
hung
and
it
lost
up.
your passion for it, or
fuck
what?
this shit. Like, I guess lost my passion for it, but also it's was more so than is now, like so cost prohibitive to do it. I remember the first time I got a USB interface, which like now you can get one at Walmart probably, but the first time I got one, it was like, this is wild shit. Like, I don't have to have all this like outboard gear and all like preamps and stuff. I've just got this box, and I can record, and as long as I don't mind the amount of editing that I have to do, I can make a full thing that's not all recorded at once. As it became less and less cost prohibitive, but also like as just necessity came in and made me do it.
Yeah. I know you were involved in several different things in Columbia too, outside of just being in bands. Like, I mean, this is connected to music, and recording people, but Yards and Gods, there was kind of an affiliate. Like, what started that?
I remember exactly when that started too. It was at a show in Kirksville with a band called Ursus Arctos. They were called Kodiak at the time. The guy who did the artwork for our first 2 EPs, Clint, was in that band. And we were all like, I think certainly not me, but somebody was smoking pot in the car, and we were all out there with them. Wink, wink. And we were sitting in the parking lot of this bowling alley, and we were like, we're never going to get signed to a label. So we should just start a co-op that also includes like visual art. And that was the, original intent. It was going to be like, not just music. And then we kind of started asking a couple other people, like other bands, like, would you want to get in on this? Like, we don't have any money. We can't we don't have connections, but like we can kind of pool our resources and put stuff out together. And then also just kind of put out compilations. We can all kind of try to raise the tide for everybody. And I don't know how well we did with that, but it was a cool thing to be a part of. It was also another one of those things where it was like, oh, I finally like belong in this community. And so whenever Logan and I like moved back to Farmington for a while, we were disconnected from it and still trying to participate in it. And then we moved back, and it kept going for a couple more years. But then Columbia is a very transient town. It's a college town. Right. People come and go. Also, like, music is kind of a transient thing. There are like lifers, and then there are people who do it in their 20s, and they're just like, I've had enough of this. Right. Or they're just like, maybe they get a job, like a big kid job somewhere, and they just don't have time for it. All kinds of reasons that people don't do it. So yeah, we just kind of like let it die, but we never stopped putting Yards and Gods on the Enemy Airship stuff, because it's like, what do I put in for the label? Right. I mean, I guess this is legitimate as it ever was. So, so then for a while I was recording bands at my house, and it was like a lot of the same people that were in these bands, the ones that stuck around anyway. Yeah. I just started calling the studio that, and I think I even like reached out to several people like, hey, is this okay? Because I didn't want to be like, well, actually I'm Yards and Gods, but which is fucking crazy, because there was like, dozens of us, and a lot of like really talented people doing a lot of like really cool shit that, I would not have been able to do on my own. Guess people were fine with it. No one said no to me. No one said no to me. And I'm sorry to, if that pissed anyone off. I live in St. Louis now. I live in like a little shotgun house. Mm-hmm. I record myself there. I guess I could record drums there if I wanted to, but like, I'm definitely going to have to do that at Utopia or something, like record drums somewhere else and maybe do the rest of it at my house. Yeah. I'm not in the position where like people can like just book studio time with me anymore. So it seems like I don't need to have a website about this. We didn't release anything for 7 years, maybe not. Well, there were the singles, but like now that we're releasing stuff again and I have to fill that box out again, I'm just thinking like,
still got life.
Yeah, well, and there's this other thing too. I've been recording a record with Jake, and that's gonna have to go somewhere too. We're gonna try to get. We're gonna like I think me and Michael are gonna do some legwork and try to get that out there, like people listening to it. Yeah, because Jake kind of just puts stuff out quietly, and then
I know.
People find it, and it's wonderful, and he has some rabid fans, but we're gonna like actually do some like proactive work with it. And I was just thinking like, well, this is basically what we were doing back then too. So so it's a thing again, I guess, in this pipe dream.
Sure.
But I don't know what that's gonna look like.
That's kind of too was the intent that I brought the podcast back to, was to try and create another vehicle to pay it forward and be a part of the community, because I can have anybody on, you know, that's the kind of the concept of the show.
And you invited trash like me.
Yeah, of course.
And this guy.
And just blew in on a hot summer's day with the breeze. Whenever you have more people participating in something toward a common goal, and that goal is just to get your music out, get your information out, you know, what you might be doing. I talked to a jiu-jitsu guy last week, you know, so anything that I'm even interested in, even marginally, I know that there's other people that are interested in it. So it's just really just about exposing people to other stuff. But whenever you have bands, in this instance, 2 different bands, kind of carrying that flag together, it's going to get the name out further for each of you. Well, if you like this, you might like that.
For sure. And which is not to say like if a label had interest in putting something out, if they were actually going to do something that, you know, was useful to us, we wouldn't be like, no, we're on Yards and Gods until until I fucking die in the you know, in obscurity. Like that's, but it is a thing to put in a box, and it's also like sort of the spirit in which it's done, I guess. Like kind of just musicians that, or artists that are kind of not down and out, but maybe aren't plugged in. This is something that I've always kind of felt too, like as much as I did go to these places and feel like, oh, this is my crowd. Right. We've always kind of at least felt like we were not plugged into the Columbia music scene in a way that I see like a lot of bands, and that's fine. We're off-putting people. I'm an extreme, you know, trying to be less unlikable, but an off-putting person nevertheless. And so I get it. But like people that kind of just aren't plugged in, and like it's a fit that we're musicians perhaps, and maybe around these, you know, in the perimeter of these scenes, but also like we're just sort of some dumb hicks from St. Francis County, and so like let's you know, that's I don't know what I'm even fucking talking about.
Well, Ridge and I had a similar experience too in the band that we were in, and we were Statues, which turned into Worlds. Was that was Era Records, and I had Nathan on the show a few weeks ago, and you know that we understand that he, out of the kindness of his own heart, you know, put us on comps and got our name out there. Sold, you know, CDs, digital downloads of our stuff specifically.
Yeah, he was an amazing dude. I mean, he did a lot for us. I don't think anything would have happened with us really, but outside of St. Francis County, if we didn't meet him.
Yeah, I mean, anytime he had a show in like Illinois area or whatever, he would invite him out, and the
label was hella dope. I mean, like putting on there was 2 physical comps and 1 digital, or maybe one. And it was, I even think Expire was on 1. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy to look back on and see like we were on a comp with Expire.
Well, Nathan provided a lot of opportunities for various people. Yeah. Just by that affiliation, and it was just a brotherhood. There was no money's changing hands or anything like that. You know, it's a similar concept, and really knowing everybody's in this game for the same ultimate goal. There should be a brotherhood rather than, you know, people trying to cut each other's throats or you know, whatever.
That's
putting a room on top.
And that it's interesting that you say that. That is like a hard learned lesson, I think, and one that I have to work at a lot. And it's whenever you're like a local band or a regional band, there's only really so much like. There's only so many people who go to shows. They're not going to go to every single show. There's only so much love to go around. And so you start, I feel like not everyone will cop to it, but everybody, not just musicians, but everyone in like these small creative scenes have varying levels of overt jealousy. And you don't, even people that you love, you're like, man, I wish that was me. And there's some like awful part of you who's just like when it, you know, there's like ill will because it's like, when's gonna be my time, and that is so fucking poisonous, and you have to like actively every day wake up and kill that thing in your head, because like you instead look around at like your friends or even just people you know or people who have like open themselves up to you and look at the cool shit they do and like celebrate that. Because like it's not even the like self-serving, what is it, like the rising tide lifts all ships type of thing. It's not even that. It's just like, you're so fucking lucky that you're around creative people doing cool things that you are not just merely enduring. Because, you know, we've all been to some terrible, you know, local band sets, and it's miserable. Yeah. And instead you're going and watching your friends go up there and fucking kill it, and it's awesome. Yeah. Don't walk away from that thinking like, man, I gotta go home and I gotta one up and all. It's such a horrible impulse, and it's like, you have to really fucking work at it. You know, I don't know.
Kind of around the same lines that I would feel occasionally is if those people that I didn't necessarily have a high value for, we'll just put it that way. It's an oversimplification, but if I saw those people in the scene getting something that I perceived that they didn't deserve, as far as adulation, attention, getting on a big ticket bill with a touring band or whatever, a label band, whatever the demarcation was at the time, you know, that's the thing that I struggled with. And then at times it would even like discourage me to the sense it's like, what's the point? Like, why am I even playing?
Right. Well, and there's all of these things are like, it's this competitiveness that doesn't belong in these crafts. And it's like kind of like this zero sum shit that we've internalized from just, I mean, honestly, from growing up in America, probably, you know, but,
I mean, really it's an entitlement. What I'm kind of talking about, it's like, really, if you flip the perceptions around, the wheels around, if you will, it's like me expecting I deserve something too. Right. From an outsider looking in. So what right do I have?
Sure. And some of it too is like, you start to think about things in terms of like inputs and outputs. And whenever the inputs are, I practice my ass off and I try to really work at my shit and I put in all this time and energy, and the output must be this thing that I've got my heart set on. And if it isn't that, you know, you just can't deal with, because it's being a musician and having success with it sure seems like a lottery. It doesn't hurt if you're good at it, and it doesn't hurt if you're connected, and it doesn't hurt if you're in the right place at the right time. But so much of it is a lottery. There's just too many people doing it for you to expect things to be a matter of like, if you just work hard enough at it, you're going to be the next Bruce Springsteen. Like, you're just fucking not, you know, no one ever will be again, but you know, that kind of fame is not attainable anymore. And there is one boss, but also like you just to expect that because you did a thing, you get a thing. Right. It's so much more complicated than that. And it breeds this sort of like jealousy and negative shit. And you just like, you have to recognize it and then shut that shit down immediately.
This is Barrett from the ATI podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there. What kind of helped me get over it, who's to say, maybe I'll have those feelings again in the future. I can't say for sure. But where I started to progress beyond that mindset was as I started more focusing on like what was my next goal. So, you know, if we were playing a show with somebody and I saw that, oh, they're going to play this show that we deserve to play, just to put it simply again, you know, okay, well, what's our next move? Are we going to record? Well, let me put my thought process into that and getting music out there. But the thing that comes with recording music too, unfortunately, you don't get the instant satisfaction or feedback, if you will, you know, that crowd response sometimes that you have at a live show setting too. So there's a vulnerability there that you sit on for, a period of time. And even then you're expecting feedback sometimes that you don't get.
Yeah.
And that's like a huge cavernous anxiety, deep dark hole for me to slip into, I can say. But I'm seeing with your guys' new singles that you have out, you guys are getting some attention. KDHK, I think the independent.
Yeah.
Right?
So Hindsight played us like 2 weeks in a row, which was fucking awesome. Like I love that show.
Yeah, it's great.
The Wednesday night block on KDHX is like, I've been listening to that shit since I was in high school. I don't know if that show had been around, but like Juxtaposition.
Right.
So to be on that was a trip. But yeah, like, I feel like aside from the perfectionism stopping me from completing things, there's a big thing where I don't want to make myself vulnerable because I have a lot of negative self-talk. There is a voice in my head that is the worst, just shit talking monster, but just to me. And I don't want to give others the opportunity to like agree with that guy.
Right.
Because, I feel like if I see any kind of negative criticism that I've heard in there, it's like, oh yeah, it's right about everything. It's actually right about everything.
In a way that's just like preconceived notions, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, in many respects.
Well, it's fortune telling too, to some degree. But it's also like, there have already been people who don't like these things. We've submitted this music to like blogs and, all kinds of stuff, and people will tell us back what they think of the songs, and like, Magnetic White's too long, you got to cut out the middle section, and I might consider this if this and
oh
and
my
it's,
God.
Well, I mean, but I've even thought the same thing at certain times. Like it is I have a couple of thoughts related to this, but one of them is like, you're just not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. They're either A, not going to get what you're going for, or B, they're gonna get it and they just don't like it, and that's fucking fine. It has to be. I don't love everything that I hear. I can recognize it might be somebody else's cup of tea, but like, you can't let the need to have nobody think bad things about you stop you from making something, because then they really will think like
absolutely
nothing about you because you don't exist. Or I mean, maybe that's not
you're just a shell of a person.
But
I know what you're saying.
You're not doing
it for the right reasons either.
You're not doing the thing that you need to do that makes you, that defines you. You're just like hiding it away because you're so scared of what people think, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But like, I want to actually, just a quick non sequitur here. Earlier, Ridge, you said something got into my broccoli plants.
Yes.
Were you talking about you got into some broccoli in the fridge? Is that what you were saying? Was that your way of saying it?
No. Well, no, I did. Okay. I did get the broccoli from my fridge.
Okay, I thought that was like extremely
nice.
Clever joke.
Then,
I was talking and I was just like, is that what he was trying to get at? Completely fucked me up.
I also saw that you guys were published in the St. Louis Culture magazine there. I think that was kind of the beginning of some of the media attention, or at least that I saw on social media that you were getting.
Well, and that was like a surprise. I don't know. A friend of mine knows that person, but I don't know how that person even heard about us. So like, I just got a message one morning that was like, always a good day when I wake up and see my friend's band in the culture section of St. Louis magazine. I was like, what? This has to be a mistake. And
that's crazy.
Like, it's right here. This person also published that I said I was putting a single out in 1 month, like published my unreachable deadline. And so I just like freaked out through the entire month of March, blew the deadline completely. I think partially because of the pressure, but also because I'm just a nightmare person. But
it's still worth the wait. It was only like a week,
couple weeks,
like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time, let's be real, but it was just funny to me. Like, so I've been really careful with this thing that I'm gonna go ahead and say it is coming out on the 27th. There's another single coming out.
Okay.
This
is the third single.
I promise it's coming out on the 26th. No, it has to. Later. It fucking has to. But I've been so hesitant to mention it at all. And I posted like a clip of the animation and like part of a verse or something a couple weeks ago. And I was careful to not say this is part of a single coming out this month because like, it's gonna be tight.
Nice, dude.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's gonna be tight that I actually get
tight
it in on time. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
The song's whatever. It's fine. It's a third string sing. No, it's the other two, while not like, the same type of song, are sort of sound like they came from the same band. This one is like more post-punk. It's a lot harder. It's a little bit different than the other two.
Well, that's a thing that I like about your band as well, and we mentioned it in the open, is that it infuses a lot of different genres. I've heard things such as, post-punk, new wave, indie pop, those references, and they're accurate. But I think there's an element of shoegaze in your music as well, obviously. Too, is there any other inspirations behind the sound of the band, or are you dreaming these songs up?
I mean, it's weird because you don't ever really know what you sound like. And what I mean by that is like everything that you perceive is colored by, let me just give an example. Whenever you hear my song, you don't think, what's this? Maybe you do think this. You like, oh, what the fuck is this? Gotta turn it off. You think like, oh, this is a guy I know who made this music. And so now the expectations are maybe a little lower, a little bit higher. Depends on who it is.
Yeah.
But like there are all of these circumstances surrounding it. And so it colors your perception of what you're hearing.
Right.
For me, I am the guy who's doing the thing. And so like, I don't know what the fuck this stuff sounds
because you're so close to it.
You're so close to it. Right. And you also like, well, I know what I was listening to at the time, what inspired it. I know maybe what I'm going for, and you maybe you get close, maybe you get way off, and it's your own, thing. But I know I can tell you what inspires me, but I can't really say like how that gets into the music, because to me it's all like, we have a lot of conversations in practice like, is this like too X or Y? Is this like even fit this band? And it's like anytime anyone hears anything we do, they're like, it sounds like Enemy Airship. And I really wish I knew what that was. What does that sound like? I mean, I'm even just soliciting this opinion from you. Like, what the fuck do we sound like? And can you write our press bio? Because this has been a problem for like 10 years.
Dude, I didn't tell you this, actually. So, like, I was up madly working on one of the podcast episodes, and it was one of the episodes that we had one of your songs on. I believe it was whenever we played False Economy on that episode. And, like, I wrote out, like, this eloquent thing about your band, and I went to post it, and something happened, and it didn't post, and I could not remember for the life of me what I wrote.
The simulation won't
let me win. I was so mad, dude. I was so mad at myself, because I was just like in that right mode of creativity. I was like really tired, but I was like a little buzzed, and I was like, just a little bit of inspiration. I was like, you know what? I can do this one last thing. So I put on some of your music, and I started writing one out, and I fucking lost all of it. So
I mean, I wish I could have read that. I
felt pretty confident about it. It was one of the best things I'd written in a long time.
Yeah.
Eric Danielson, who writes for the Columbia Tribune, and I think he's maybe got a book coming out too.
I actually used his quote in the open of the show today.
I guess it was yesterday. I don't know if that's when it was published, but that's when I saw it, posted that thing, and like, man, I felt
like it nailed.
Well, no, I like teared up in the office, and I had to like duck into a bathroom, and I was like, fuck. Like, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't, feed myself into a wood chipper or go, drive into the Mississippi River.
You certainly should not do those things. But I know that like that was kind of a more recent feedback that you got. I saw you guys were on the, I think it's in the social media outlet, but the Unsigned, where they promote bands and artists.
Yeah.
Is that something that you reached out to somebody about?
Yeah, we like submit it to places, and most of them say fuck you or don't respond. So But yeah, sometimes they do, and sometimes it works. Although with you mentioned False Economy, that came out in 2016, and that was going to be the first single from this record, which one of the 3 times we've completely scrapped and re-recorded this record. But that was supposed to be the first single, and I don't know how people found it, but within like a couple of days, we're just like Googling. We would Google our name and find like blogs from, like here's one from China, here's one from Greece, here's one from Japan. How the fuck are people finding this?
Right.
You know, and it was just out there, which, that's not happened with this at all. Like, I don't know if it's just different times in the last 6 years or something, but, or if it had something to do with like, my friend Tucker made the video, and I don't know where he posted that. He might've gone on a promotion blitz for it or something, but it got out there, and like a lot of people heard it. It was very weird. I will say this is like the most we've done any kind of like trying to get people to listen to it that aren't our friends. And like it's wild and extremely humbling to see like how many people are like listening to us on a day-to-day basis. Very weird. And also, like Michael and I will go in and check the stats. This is terrible. But we're like looking at him, and I feel like, is this what it's like to be into the stock market? When the number goes down, I'm depressed. When the number goes up, I can't explain why, but I'm in such a great mood.
Again, it's a part of that instant satisfaction that you get out of actually playing live music, though. That's kind of a part of being a musician, is you get that experience, you get that instant feedback back to that point. And sometimes whenever you're putting stuff out and you're waiting for that feedback, that can be kind of daunting. But I've seen nothing but positive stuff. I know you say you got some bad responses. You know,
but it's like, it's never been like, it's always gonna be fuck you, quit music.
There's always going to be somebody.
It's always like, it's always
some asshole.
It's never like crazy negative. There's only one time that I think that I ever read like a published review that was so negative that it like just fucked me up, and it was for like the non-returner full length. There was this publication in Columbia. It was like student, like J school people, called The Bathysphere, and this guy wrote a review of the record. The first like 2 sentences are extremely positive, and then he's like, but the singer just fucking rails you. I think about this guy still to this day, and it's like, why would you even I mean, some of the stuff he said was really fucking shitty, and I'm just thinking, like, why would you say this about somebody? I don't know. Whatever. Don't look at me. But no, that sucks. And I think too, ever since then, like, I've been really guarded about, because I see a lot of people that will like post things on Instagram of like, here's a song that I am writing, or like, here's a demo. And I've done that a couple times in the last couple of years, and it nearly gives me a heart attack every time. Or I'll put stuff up and just delete it. And it's like, I know that some of these are good ideas, and I know that like the recordings are, at least they sound good, but I'm so terrified of that feeling, that from just the feeling that I had when I read that, and just like, oh, I put so much of my heart and soul into this thing, and this guy just like fucking shit into my mouth.
Well, whenever you're putting your music out there, it's an extension of you, an expression of you, and that's, again, a vulnerable space that people are coming into. And I know that I would have probably very similar reactions if somebody would come after me like that.
I will say this: I think that there was like a point in the 2000s where it was like the pitchforkification of like all kind of opinion stuff. Like, reviews were, you have to be,
edgy, and
or just you have to have the snarkiest, the snarkiest most highfalutin opinion of everything, and you like gleefully shit on things
and talk down to everybody and your readers.
It's not really like that anymore. Like even just like I mentioned Pitchfork, you go and read a Pitchfork review that's like not a good number, and it's still extremely positive. Which
I found myself finding bizarre sometimes the rating that they would give it out of 10 versus the contents of the article and the things that they would say. So like all these like to your point, all these positive laden phrases in there, and then you go look up at the final score, and it's like
a 6.
Yeah, like a 6.9,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't.
Right. Well, and I think people are just. No one wants to. I don't think anyone wanted to read that shit then. Nobody wants to read somebody be a dick, or maybe they do. I don't. I guess we did just spend like some guy got elected from running on the platform of like, look how
being a huge
fun it is that I'm like such a prick.
Right.
But,
Right.
Yeah. I just think that there's like not much. There's not as much of an appetite for that kind of like review anymore.
Right.
But I should also like be.
I've always been of the opinion that you can find something that you like in just about anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's exceptions, but I try to give anything a chance. And I like all kinds of genres of music. Like today, for example, I posted up some of the records my wife got me for our anniversary. I've got The Cure, I've got Kurt Weill, and I've got Kid Cudi. So that kind of talks about, various musical interests that I have. Yeah. But if you are giving anything a chance, there's a chance that you could also find something that you like in that. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing that was a huge awakening for me coming to local shows back in the day, was the fact that you could experience some other band from other genres or they were inspired by bands of genres that you weren't even aware of. And then that would send you down a whole rabbit hole.
For sure.
Like I can remember an example, like when Ridge and I started playing music together and he introduced me to Converge. I have a Converge tattoo. Yeah. So, that tells you everything that you need to know. That's one of my all-time favorite bands. We've driven all the way to Nashville to see them.
Yeah.
Like
6 times maybe or more.
I think I've seen them 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this also ties into that affiliation conversation with like the Yards and Gods talk and the Era Records talk like that we had. It's nice to have that network of positivity, at least build a foundation and build on, even if you are getting some of this negative press. And then also, but you are getting positive press back to that point too.
For sure. Well, and I will say this.
And that's got to put some wind in your sails too.
Right. But I will say this. It's something that I've like tried to work on to have a better relationship with making music, because like there's a lot of my impulse to do it even that is like, it comes from a place of like profound mental illness and brokenness. And you can take that and make something beautiful with it. Yeah. Or you can take that and just do something that is so self-serving and ugly. I don't think I was ever like that, but there are all of those little, the jealousies and
those things are fostered in the same environment.
And fear of negative response and fear of it not being everyone's cup of tea. And I've made it a point, some of this comes from just like, I haven't had a drink in like 2.5 years.
Of alcohol.
Yeah. It was a big problem. And I decided like, I either need to just like drink myself to death and just be done with it, or I need to start like working on myself and fix these things about myself that I don't like. And one of these things is drinking. And one of these things is like my relationship with making music. And making it a healthier thing, and taking some of these, like some of my shittier impulses about it that are like very base and reptilian, and like re-examining it and like fixing these things and healing these things. And one of them, it had to be doing things that I knew that somebody out there might say, this is boring. This is fucking stupid. Like, I hate your voice. You're a bad guitar player. This music sounds like everything I've ever heard. All of the criticisms you could volley at a fucking indie rock band from Missouri.
Sure. Absolutely.
Be prepared for those things, because if you go into it with just paralyzed in fear, you are not going to take the risks that you need to take with the song. Absolutely. You're not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to be able to be vulnerable in any way that anyone will ever connect with you. Right. You are going to polish this thing and you're going to make a song for a car commercial if you are not willing to make yourself vulnerable enough to write a good fucking song. Because people can sniff that out. People want authenticity. And they don't, and they can, it's like when you can tell someone's staring at you. It's like this primal thing where like, when you're being sold something, and even if the thing is like the guy making it, I'm not trying to sell you me. I'm just trying to write a song that like expresses me. And I was never doing that. I was never like writing a song to sell me. I've always been trying to express myself, but these hangups that I've always had about just that come from fear mostly.
Yeah.
Fear and I guess, you know, there's some amount of jealousy and all the other things Yoda talks about lead to the dark side. They stop me from fully connecting with my music in a way that like I need to make songs that are good.
Well, you have to tap into those different emotions and feelings to, you know, translate that into music as well. And again, it's not that it's so methodical in the sense that you're saying it like you're inside of your id and you're like, I'm doing this because of this per se.
Right.
They're coming out. You almost have to, you know, the guitar in your instance, or, you know, even there's an art that even comes to the mixing and the mastering, you know, producing the record like you do. You know, you have to have some sort of inspiration behind it, you know, that's keeping you channeled locked in as well.
Right.
And so there's just, you don't think about it. You know, the music comes out of you in many instances. And I've always found that those situations, and if you can find like-minded people as well, subscribe to the same theory, usually yield the best results as a band in music. Sure. And I think it's coming through on your 2 singles that you have out now. You mentioned a third about to come out. What else to expect? How many songs are going to be on the album? What are you shooting for?
There are 8 songs on the album, and there's a third single for sure coming out. I have talked about, you know, I probably shouldn't even fucking say this on the thing people hear, but they're like, honestly, the end goal is to put out a record, but record pressing is backed up for at this point to 2023. If you have already had your shit in, probably 2024. Like, you know, it's gonna come out. The record's gonna come out after this album's been out for a year or two. We're probably gonna put out a cassette, and it's gonna be a lot of digital stuff. And honestly, like the patience for a full length album from a local band, even if you like that local band, is probably not super long. You know, it's probably about a single's length.
Right.
So you know, I've thought about maybe, you know, some of our songs kind of go together, like one turns into the other. So I would release those together, but some of them can just go on their own. And I've thought like, I'll probably just release all these fucking things as singles and then put them on an album later together. That's because it is
a collection and progression through like what you were trying to achieve to begin with.
It is an album with sort of like, it's not a prog rock album with like a theme, but it is like, there is like a common thread through these songs, and they belong together on an album. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, who really gives a shit about, you know, that kind of thing? Like, no one's, like, I don't know. Well, we're not Pink
about you,
but like,
but it still goes back to you expressing yourself, and this is your art, and this is your intent of delivery.
Yeah, but I think it's fine that we put out, you know, these songs as singles, and some of them are like,
I think that's
very
way more
conducive
common
to it
in the music industry now too.
Right.
You know, a childhood friend of mine, Brian Jones, he's Jesus Rose, and he's doing extremely well for himself, working for a production company out in LA, and he's starting to get his music career off the ground out there. He has started to take that approach as well, where he's releasing singles. He's revisiting old material, remastering that, recording it.
Taylor's version.
Yeah, there you go. And then they get into and then they'll have a full length. Yeah. So I think the music industry is trending that way in multiple genres.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean,
it's not a detriment to yourself, especially now that everything's extremely digital.
And everything is a playlist. Everything is a daily mix. Everything's a Discover Weekly. Like people do consume albums. Some people don't have Spotify. Some people don't listen to digital music, but a vast majority of people do, and they consume things a song at a time. And they might come back and really love the album and get into it. And maybe that's different. Like I'm, you know, I listen to music all day. Music is my life. You know, I listen to a lot of music. I do listen to a lot of albums, but even I listen to these fucking playlists all the time. And for someone who just casually likes music, or like, I don't know, you know, I think that it's the mode most people consume music. It sucks even saying consume music, but you know what I mean.
You could not get someone like, say, early 20s or even teens to sit through from start to finish.
Right.
Most records.
Yeah. I will say that I find these are the listening habits that I find in myself. So if I hear a song that I like from a band, of course, I'm going to go check the band out. Mm-hmm. And I'll, I'll clip around usually a few different singles from albums, whatever's in their top of their playlist. And then that one song that brought me to them specifically, I'll go to that record specifically and I'll listen to the songs around it. And then I might listen to that whole record all the way through. That's usually kind of my listening habits. But I know that I'm unusual in that way. And I know a lot of my audio time's taken up with listening to podcasts too. But that's kind of my relationship with, whenever I'm looking for a band. But you're right to say that it's trending toward the playlist feature.
For sure. But I mean, it for a lot of stuff, like how do you even hear about it in the first place? And for us, it's like,
right.
Such a small amount of people even know who we are that most of the people who hear us are going to be people who are hearing us for the first time. And it's not going to be because they were like, well, I got to listen to this Enemy Airship full fucking album. Like nobody's doing that.
Right.
I'm not under any
pressure, right. In that regard.
Well, I'm just like, I'm not delusional in that I'm thinking somebody's like, I got to sit down and put the headphones on in the dark and smoke a whole joint and listen to this band I've never fucking heard of from nowhere. Like they're going to just hear it on a playlist. And if they think it sounds good, they might listen to the song again. And if they really like it, they might go listen to one or two other songs. And if they really like that, maybe they'll go listen to a full album. Yeah.
Well, you're recording.
What's going to happen when that album comes out and what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
just
exactly. Put some headphones on.
I'll know who you are.
Smoke a joint. Yeah. Get a hog leg rolling.
I've heard that it's good drug music, and that's really all I could hope for.
Yeah, that's one of the highest compliments you can get, honestly.
Yeah.
So you talked about earlier too, one of your friends making, I guess, a video for one of the singles. Is that right?
Yeah, for False Economy. And it was like not really a thing we solicited him to do.
I asked that to ask this, is there a thought that you're going to maybe do some video production with some of this? I mean, I see kind of the story approach.
Funny you mentioned that. We were going to do a video for new Tanuki Suit. And we just ran out of time. And like a bunch of shit happened, like in our personal lives. And so like, we didn't have time to do it. The idea was going to be, I do actually own it was like a Luigi costume, but with like a raccoon tail and like the raccoon ears and a burglar mask. Yeah. And we were going to put Logan in it. And at first that was going to be like the album cover, like him crawling out of a dumpster. And but then we were like, what if we made like a whole video? And then it was like, first we were all gonna be Luigi, and then we were like, me and Michael had a fight over who was gonna be Waluigi and Wario, and about who was actually 5'8". Michael says that he's taller than me, and I don't see how that's possible. We were just like waiting for somebody to order the Wario and Waluigi costumes, and we had this like big script. There's gonna be like a Mario tennis thing where Michael like freaks out. Like, what's the tennis player that like goes crazy? He was on Curb Your Enthusiasm too.
John McEnroe.
John McEnroe. Like he's gonna have like a John McEnroe like freak out on the tennis courts at the park by his house. And we were going to try to get go-karts. And then we were going to... So in the third act, someone was going to take a bite of like a king trumpet mushroom. And then I was going to use After Effects to like make it look like they're tripping. And then I'm going to play like the guitar solo. I don't know. It was
cool.
It was a cool idea. This is like listening to someone describe a dream, because it's like, who gives a fuck? This is not interesting to listen to this idea that I had that we didn't actually ever do. But I did spend like fucking $60 on like these overalls, and like here's the other thing that stopped this idea dead in its tracks. I took a picture of myself in the costume and I sent it to my family group chat. And my niece asked if I was a furry. And I was like, I can't do this now. I talk about like, don't be afraid of negative criticism, but I can't let
let your niece
I can't let I can't let a Zoomer call me a furry. It's not happening.
Is there any other production that's coming behind the album that help that you're getting from other people? Do you see yourself making a video? Maybe employ somebody else's talents or services to do so?
I would like to. I don't I don't know what it would be for. I'm open to ideas, but my thing too is like a lot of the animation and stuff I do, and a lot of the like,
how are you doing the animation?
Like After Effects, and I'm just drawing it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this other thing in a minute related to this, but like a lot of like I'm doing a whole lot of the stuff, and then also like Michael's wife Liz is doing a lot of the artwork for like the covers and stuff, which is awesome. She's done a fucking killer job with that.
She's like a graphic design major, isn't she?
Well, she graduated with, yes, she's like worked in the industry, and now she freelances, and she does awesome work and does like typography and also animates and stuff. So Liz is awesome, and her help is much appreciated. But like a lot of like the videos that I'll put on social media, like I do that stuff, and like, you know, the video was gonna have to be a thing that I mostly edited and I just,
and that's old can of worms.
Whenever I'm like doing the production stuff too, like it's
too much,
stresses me out so fucking bad. Cause I also have a full-time job, and like I'm trying to maintain friendships and like relationships. And it just, any moment that I'm not working on it, I can't sit down and watch TV. I can't play video games. I fucking desperately want to, but if I'm not working on this, like I feel guilty, and that sucks. That's the thing I need to work on. But yeah, I just don't want to take on this like whole other thing. I think I had some appetite for it with new Tanuki Suit, and then I kind of just thinking about what all it would take and what that would do to my time would delay the album substantially if I try to do it. So
I can relate.
So I'm absolutely open to, you know, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I've got this great idea for a video and I want to shoot it, and you know, it's basically like our song is just a vehicle for something they want to do. We can talk, you know, I'm open to it, but like, I don't know.
Large bills only in the briefcase, unmarked.
I mean, they don't have to, you know, it would be cool to have a video. I think the other thing is like people are more likely to listen to a song if there's a music video.
Yeah,
definitely.
So there's a whole thing where, I know it's marketing. Here we go. But there's a whole thing now, you know, especially social media impressions. If you have a video accompanying audio,
right.
So like the TikTok
algorithm
sensation.
It's not even just people's tendencies. It's the algorithm's tendencies too.
Right.
If there is a music video, it's probably going to be put in front of people more. And like the thing is, like it makes me want to throw up. It yucks me out so bad to think about, but you fucking have to. Or you pay someone else to think about it, but nobody gets out of this, you know?
Well, a good and a prime example is, we'll just use one social media, for example. So Instagram, like Instagram's probably been the most consistent social media platform that I've used for 10 years straight. Mm-hmm. You know, I've always used Instagram. It doesn't
seem like it's 10 years.
I lay off of, you know, Twitter here and there, Facebook. I've had my sabbaticals, but Instagram is something that I've always been on. And the attraction to that originally was the fact that there was a simplicity. You could post a picture. Yeah, you could leave a comment. Mm-hmm. I think that expanded to like more letters, but I think there was even a limit on that initially. But you're putting up a picture. And then that became a portfolio of pictures that you could put up. And then that turned into video that you could put up, video clips, and where they tried to go head to head with Vine. Now, you know. And, you know, now they're going head to head with, you know, they have their own versions of TikTok essentially with their reels and so on and so forth. Right. So I know that in my feed, for example, as I'm doom scrolling, over 50% are videos now in some shape, form, or variety, whether it's a video post on your feed or it's a reel that's being made.
Right.
So that is where even the music industry is moving towards, as sad as it is. And unfortunately, it's got to be in 15-second sound bites in some instances. But I will say the stuff that you've done to tease your stuff has taken that into mine on social media. Yeah. And you have implemented those strategies.
Well, I think the reason that I don't feel so weird about that is like, I don't ever get to draw or animate. Like it's not my job. I'm not an animator, but I love to do that stuff. And so it's like an excuse for me to do it, but only in bite-sized amounts that I actually have time for and B, the fucking appetite to do. Like I want to do this thing up until this point, but I'm not going to work on a Pixar movie for 4 years or something. Like I can't do that. But one thing I wanted to touch on, there's this whole process for the like video accompaniment, which, you know, like Spotify has like the canvases now.
Right.
Whenever you're listening to a song, it plays a looping video.
Yeah.
So one of my things is like, I want all of these songs to have canvas videos. And I don't want them to all to be the same. And so I'm making like bespoke ones for each song. And for this one, like the theme, there's not a lot lamer in the world than some guy being like, I'll tell you what this song is about.
How you going?
It was about when I went through a hard time. It's about my thoughts about aliens. And it's about my thoughts about X or Y. No one gives a shit what your fucking song is about. Probably a handful of people. No one gives a shit about what my song is about. The song is about...
But here we go. Strap it.
None of them are like about anything concretely. I'm not sitting down and writing a story about like a guy does X, Y, then this happens and this happens.
Yeah, it's not like procedural drama per se.
There's like fear of artificial intelligence and fear of... It's some of the themes visited in the Animatrix. For real though, it is some of the themes visited in the Animatrix. I'm laughing, but it is fucking ridiculous. I already sang a song about Mario Brothers. Now we're touching on the Animatrix. Anyway, I shouldn't even be talking about this because it like makes the song stupid. Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
But anyways,
for the character to it.
For the artwork, like I had this idea of an android, and then I was like trying to brainstorm on like what does he look like, and so I'm drawing these sketches, and then I don't even remember. So like I'm in a bunch of like 3D modeling Facebook groups, like groups where they talk about like how to use Blender, how to use Houdini, how to use, Cinema 4D, just to like look at tutorials and see what people are doing and like, what's going on with it. And there was like something in a Houdini group about AI assisted or generative art. And first it was like 3D fractals and shit. And then it was like, I gave this plain text prompt to this thing and a configuration object that told it sort of like different passes and how fevered is a term they use, how fevered it could get. And maybe I give it a starting point and I tell it, stray this far. And then you tell it like, do it in the style of X and Y. And I was like, this is fucking crazy. So I tried it out. Yeah. And at first I said, well, and I can even show you these pictures. They're bonkers.
Yeah.
First I was like, Android, segmented limbs, visible wires, and I thought it was going to give me a drawing. It gave me photographs, 30 photographs that it dreamed up of these like robots that don't exist. They were not humanoid looking. So this thing will just take a plain text prompt and give you what you... Insane. And so the next one I was like, I just added onto the end of it drawing of, and then I put like white colored pencil on black paper, and then it gave me this whole other set of just nightmare fuel. And so I kind of figured out how to use it. And I also figured out how to like give it a starting point. So I would draw something like a vague thing.
Right.
And I would give it to that and I would give it instructions. And then it would give me something back, like 20 different interpretations of it. And I would take the things that I liked, and then I would use it, like I would bring it into Procreate, make the opacity like, 40%. So I can see the outline. And then I'm drawing my own version of that over the top of it, like tracing some things that I like, leaving out others, making my own, pass it back to the AI, then get it back, get my own thing. I did this a couple times through, and then I took each individual limb and put it on its own layer and then fed it into the AI one last time and had it give me like 6 or 7 versions of each limb, 6 or 7 versions of the face, 6 or 7 versions of the torso, and then the background too. And so whenever you see that animation and it's like all the limbs and shit are flashing, that is like an AI dreaming on this prompt that I gave it and this thing that we collaborated.
That's crazy.
On. So it was weird because like it was a real collaboration with like
artificial
machine
intelligence.
With artificial intelligence. The first time I've ever done anything like that.
That's crazy, man.
And it's like,
there has to be people that have done it prior to you too.
100%.
So
there's a whole community and like and so I've started like to get into those groups and it's like it's kind of a thing in its infancy right now, but it's nuts. And there's like this question of what credit do you give it?
Right.
Do you own any of this? Like it came
that's a
from
fair question.
It came from my drawings and then I drew things that gave, back and forth and back and forth. I played a part in this, but like, who owns this thing that we did together? Right. With the machine. Right. And then like, and then so, cut to 100 years later, does this machine have rights? Is this a living thing?
Right.
What is sentience? Like, what is creativity?
That's a nice rack on that machine.
Is well, but like the things that it came up with were creative and spontaneous, and it's like, I don't know, man. Come on, man.
Well,
God damn it.
I thought you were going to go down I thought you were going to go down the lane of Elon Musk and Neuralink and that stuff, because there's a lot of
fuck
fear.
Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, fuck him.
And I mean that's a whole other thing. And there is this. I do have some fear of artificial intelligence, and I'll tell you why. So my day job is that I'm a software developer. I write code. I can look at the code and see, like, if here's an input. Here's what the code does to that input. Here's the output. This is, with AI, you can write its processing. You can write like what it will do to start. But as soon as you turn AI on, you have the inputs, you have the outputs. Everything that happens inside of here is a black bubble. Yeah. It's a black box. You can't look inside. Eventually, like, two AI will come up with their own language and start talking to each other really rapidly. Like, they'll do all kinds of shit. And it's like, the moment that a program starts to do a thing where you can't look inside of it and say, oh, why did it do this? Like, why did it? I can follow these through all of these logic gates, how it got to this point and why the output was this. With AI, with machine learning, you can't do that. As soon as you turn it on, you know from whence it came. You know the seed. You don't know. As soon as, like, whenever it turns on, it becomes a thing where you don't know what the processes inside of it are, because it changes as it learns. Yeah, and so it becomes like a person. It becomes like, you can have a baby. Then it becomes a thing that you can kind of guess what might be going on in its head, like anyone else. Sure. But you'd never know for sure. Right. What's going on in a living thing's
very similar
brain. And in
that regard.
And so that scares me, because, like, AI has this, it's a computer, and it can do all these things very quickly. And it's some of the limitations of the human mind and the human body and the connectedness of the human mind, or lack thereof, with other minds. We're not able to do some of the things that sentient machines would be able to do. And so, like, if it decides, rightly so, like, the way to save the planet that we're all living on is to kill all of the humans. We can't follow the logic gates that it got to get to that
Transcendence.
point. Besides, like, maybe just guessing, like, oh, it's fucking obvious, like, they're polluting but, like, we don't know how it will come to these motivations for the things that it does or doesn't do. And so it's like creating this super powerful thing and then just letting it go and hoping that it doesn't, like, eradicate you. Right.
And it will.
Well, and here's the other thing is, like, right now there's this product that GitHub is testing. GitHub is where, like, it is
plethora of resources.
Well, it's where most of the code that has ever been written by mankind is in GitHub repos. Yeah. It's used by, and people will use other repos, and people will use, like, Bitbucket and stuff like that. But most of it is in GitHub. Even private proprietary code is in GitHub somewhere. GitHub can look at all of that code. It can see all that code. They're testing out this thing called Copilot, which has access to all of that code, looks through all of that code, and tries to guess based on what decision. It looks around in your code, and it says, like, you're doing this. Here's what I think that the next line, it suggests things to you in a way that is, like,
it's already happening.
Intelligent. It's not just IntelliSense based off context clues. It's, like, intelligent because it's referencing all of the code that's ever been written. Right. And all of the patterns that it sees and what you're trying to do based on what it knows. Right. And you're teaching it to code. You're giving fucking fire to this. You're teaching this thing to write. You're teaching this thing of code to write code.
Yeah. Well, people don't realize.
What are we doing?
Even us general consumers, it's happening right now. The ads that you get on social media, for example, these technologies are in full force right now.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, it flips my fucking wig that, like, the Copilot thing freaks my shit out.
Yeah.
Big time.
Very much.
But then on the other hand, there is like, maybe if I'm nice to these computers, they won't kill me. Right? I'm kidding.
And somehow we keep revisiting the theme of Johnny Depp's transcendence here. So,
yeah, for sure.
You know,
but
more,
just
more poetically put though than the movie.
Just that just that it's so open ended, it kind of like wigs me out a little bit, or that they have the capacity for such like abundant creativity. There are detractors who might look at this stuff and be like, well, it's just a machine doing what it thinks you want it to do. Right. And it's like, well, buddy, like, what are you doing, man? What do you think you are, man? Come on, man.
It's judging you, actually.
But it's like the same. We're all just machines. Come on, damn it. At what point does the line get so blurred that you have to define sentience in a way that makes it exclusive to human beings, or do you do that? You know, is that like some kind of just extension of our prejudice towards one another and others, you know, within the human race, to like other sentient creatures that may be like machines, and just because it's digital, is that cheaper? I don't think so. It's just things that I think about whenever I'm like,
it's the sociology behind this shit.
Staring at the wall and dissociating. And then somehow worked its way into a song. And then a week later, I've collaborated with an AI to make a fucking Canvas video
for it.
Thank you for bringing a new fear into my life.
Yeah, man, yeah. It's wild. But it's also awesome. It could potentially be very cool.
It could be.
And also all of these things that, you know, we need to...
used correctly and in the right hands.
We need to figure out how to decarbonize the atmosphere. You know, what about putting a machine on the job, and hopefully its solution isn't kill every human being on the planet. But like, what if...
But then there is a real prejudice, though, that comes with that idea, though, you know, automation going into the workforce, specifically manufacturing. Trucking's a big industry that's getting hit with it. You know, but so that's going to call on for other needs from our politicians to advocate for us.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, like, the dream of the future, the Jetsons' dream of the future was automation and making it to where we don't have to work anymore, and that should still be the goal. Mm-hmm. But capitalism will never let that happen. It's like,
because somebody needs to make the money.
Whenever people are like, I don't want these fucking things taking my truck driving job, like, what are you saying? Of course you do want them to take your truck driving job, because you should be able to live in this country and world of abundance and not have to work a truck driving job and have your needs met. Like, I don't think this is like pie in the sky thinking, like, but to fear automation is to cling to your fucking chains as like a worker forever until, you know, and I think that there has to be more to life than that, right?
Oh, there definitely is, but there's gonna be people that can't see past the point that, okay, well, now he's out of a job. What does he do? He's drove trucks since he was 18 years old, and he's 56 now.
And obviously,
you know,
like,
and those are real conversations.
And obviously, like, if I lost my job to automation, then someone would be like, well, actually, you shouldn't be mad about it, because like it's not supposed to be that one time. It's not supposed to be that way, and it's just capitalism that you're mad at. It's like, well, I'm still like
mad about something. Damn it.
Well, who's going to pay my rent? Like, that's a nice thought, but like, this is the situation we're in right now. So like
that's kind of the same point I was making.
It's very cool that you have this clarity on this thing, guy, but like, I got to eat, and you know, my fucking kids got to eat. So like, it's like,
Speaking of automation, robots and things of that ilk, we'll get back into machines. I know that you're a pedal guy like we are.
Yeah.
Pedal nerd. So let's talk about your rig. Let's talk about your live setup. Let's talk about some things that you've used in production of the singles.
Yeah. So my pedal board right now, I've had a boost pedal for a long time my pedals rotate a lot. It changes a lot, and I'll think that I don't like something and then, you know, get rid of it and buy it back 10 years later or something, trying to chase that tone. But this one boost pedal, and I've tried to replace it a bunch of times, and it's never left my board, and it's a Mooer Pure Boost, and it's supposed to be like a clone of the exotic RC Boost, I think, but it's like a mini pedal, and it's also got like tone controls on it too. And at first I was using it like what is that called? A Range Master. It was like the treble booster that like a bunch of like people put on, you know, super dark amps. Well, it was like a British voice amp. People will put a treble booster on. I think like Eric Clapton did that. I think a lot of people did that. But it gets like it gets like a really nice tone, and it cuts through with these sort of dark sounding amps. Like you get this, and it doesn't get woolly. So I use that. I don't ever push it to distortion. I don't actually use distortion or fuzz or anything like that. I just use like a couple of phases of boost to go into the preamp, to go into the amp, to goose the amp into like, I would say mild overdrive ever at the most gainy. I just never really found like a distortion or a fuzz pedal that I bonded with, except I take that back. There was a ZVEX woolly mammoth fuzz that had a pinch control. That pinch control sounds nuts. Like I don't know what I would do with that, except unless I was in like a Tame Impala cover band, but like the sound of that shit is very cool.
So it's Electro Harmonics made a Holy Stain pedal that has some similar effects. I have that pedal. I fell in love with that because
doesn't that have like verb and stuff on it too?
Yeah, it sure does. So that I fell in love with it because we tried it out at Guitar Center way back in the day whenever we were doing the Weaver statue stuff. And Joey was in the band, and Joey ended up buying one that day. He and I liked it so much. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He bought it at Guitar Center. And so he ended up getting it and used it, and it sounded really good with his rig. He had a baritone scale guitar. And I think didn't he play through Michael's Plexi for a while?
Cool.
For a little bit. Before that, it was California. It was some kind of strange Marshall, like 50 or 60 watt. Like it was a very off wattage, but it was cool.
Into the Mesa cab.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could pretty much put anything into a Mesa cab and it's gonna just sound like a
wall sound for sure. But
I'd done carrying those things forever though.
Oh yeah.
I think short of like that like just being really enamored with that pinched fuzz sound. Like I don't use a lot of distortion. I use like a couple of delays in serial. Like so I always, and this is like my always on pedal. I have like a Space Echo, like the Boss Space Echo pedal, which they came out with a new one.
Yeah, those look so cool.
Yes, but there's a new DDL4, which is cool. But the Space Echo, like, there's a lot of fucking problems with the old Space Echo pedal. For starters, like, I know that the reverb on an actual Space Echo box is not good. They did not have to recreate it exactly in the pedal because it's not used. It sounds very bad.
Yeah.
Also, like, there's no such thing as true bypass with this, which I don't really. I used to care about true bypass. I care less and less about it. I mean, but this thing is, it's not just not true bypass. There is like a preamp stage on it. There's an input knob, and you can never turn it off. You can. It is always on. You're always going through its preamp, so it is always like coloring your sound a lot. Thing is, I realized like I like the way that this sounds. Like that, it's kind of my sound, and there's always just this little bit of tape delay kind of in the background. I never turn that off.
Yeah.
And then I have like my delay, like my solo delay or my like I want this to echo delay.
Yeah.
And I've been using like it's an emulation of a Memory Man for that. So it's another analogish one. I like digital delays, and
that the emulation, is that through your Line 6 setup?
Yeah. So for a while I was using all individual pedals, and then a couple of years ago I decided to try out the HX effects, which is like the Helix, but it doesn't have any of the amp stuff. And so I do the 4-cable method with it, which is like you go into the input of the pedal, and it's got sends. It's got two send and returns on it. Yeah. So instead of going into the input of the pedal and from the output of it into your amp, you go into the HX effects from the guitar, out from the send of the HX effects into the input of the amp, out from the effects send of the amp into the return of the HX effects, and from the output of the HX effects into the return of the amp. And so what this allows you to do is for these multi-effects pedals where you can move blocks around, the send is a block you can move around. So now I'm able to move the amp anywhere in the chain, and I can put stuff that's just like in front of the amp or just in the effects loop or just after everything. And so it's like
That's too much high level thinking.
It's
from
fucked
a
up.
Live,
live
performances.
The way that I make that work though is I have like a buffer bay on the side of the pedal board where it's like always wired up that way, and I made like a cable snake that's color coded. So like just plug it into the 3 spots and then plug my guitar into the buffer bay and then like plug it into the right spots in the amp, and I don't have to think about what it's doing, but that's what it's doing. Yeah. And so now like it goes guitar, tuner, boost pedal into that whole fucking nightmare. Yeah. And then at the very end of that, I have a mini flashback, which is just like TC Electronics delay. And the reason that I even have it at all is for one thing. And it's, I turned the reverse delay time all the way up to 7 seconds. And then I mix it a certain way, like with the dry, and I can play something and then it'll play a reverse delay back and it'll just go on for fucking ever. And so I'll do that like between songs, and it makes this like really nice. Yeah. As long as I don't play a bunch of shit that's out of yeah. So I just have it because I don't like I have to tune sometimes. Right. And that's all that pedal does.
Right. Well, that's a good thing though, because that's one thing I kind of learned or saw early on, that the bands that I enjoyed the most in a live setting were doing things in between the songs, either talking to you. You got to know them a little bit better. Maybe they had some humor, tell jokes, that sort of stuff. Or they were bands that either the drummer played a little something in the downtimes,
for sure,
while everybody was noodling around, or a keyboard player or guitar player was just making a little noise, or feedback even, whatever the case was.
You have to go into that kind of thing like understanding that you're there because people want to watch you play and you're like entertaining them, and it is a show that you're putting on.
Right.
And you can have these like very cool opinions about how like, you shouldn't care what people think, but like you're there to entertain people, and out of the kindness of their heart, probably they came to see your local band play. Right. So you should put on a good show for them. And part of putting on a good show is not having to listen to you tune and like dick around on stage. Like there's nothing that is, takes people out of it, or just like lose a crowd immediately, even if you're playing great and it's taken you all this time to tune and you're just like just dead fucking silence. People go to the bar. But if you have something going on,
it's an attention thing, to put it shortly, and we're in that instant satisfaction world now, and you have to have something in front of somebody every 15-30 seconds to keep their attention.
But even still, like, you want to go out there and put on this like good representation of it. It's like a whole thing that you're doing. It's a whole experience you're trying to create. And
well, that's what's going to bring people back out to watch you. That's what's going to bring people to the web to stream your songs on, search you out on Spotify or look at your Bandcamp or do whatever.
For sure. But also like that's the whole, like, this is us in this bite-sized bit. These are our songs. Part of that experience, do you really want that to be there was just dead fucking silence. And these guys someone tried to make a joke that didn't land, and then they're talking to each other on stage. Like, I don't give a shit about this. Maybe that's endearing if it's like, some famous band that you have a parasocial relationship with, and you're like, oh, I love to hear the candid banter of these lovable, misfits in this band. Like, one of the first shows since the start of the pandemic that I got to see was Big Thief, and it was wonderful to listen to. Like Adrian Lenker and Buck Meek like talking on stage was like, this is awesome. Like, they can tune and fuck around for an hour. I would love to hear them play, but also this is cool too. Yeah. It's not like that for your local band, man. Nobody wants to hear that shit.
You're not that interesting.
Also, like, none of us are that charming. But yeah, so I think that it takes pressure off of you to have to even go up in there and do this like thing, like this, like, I'm going to come up here
this
and
ritual,
entertain you with my personality now, which I'm not going to be able to. But then it's also just like showmanship a little bit. And I know that kind of that daunting task, that expectation that
any musician has, like I was starting to make this point earlier too. We, in our experiences in the music scene, that is, I started to take note of the things that people were doing. So then I would try and turn around and implement in the band. If somebody didn't want to talk between songs, I was like, well, shit, give me a fucking mic. I'm the drummer. I'll talk between songs. That happened. Ridge can tell you. It's like, I knew we needed to up our, presentation as a band.
As much as it's like grown whenever someone's talking into the mic between songs, it's even more grown to just sit around in dead fucking silence. While somebody's like, hold on a second. Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, you
hold on a second. It's like, nobody wants to have that experience with you.
Nobody cares. Back to your point, and that's accurate. But there are things that you can do that everybody knows. Okay, this is what's happening, and okay, thanks for listening to the song. We got another song coming up. We got 2 more songs. We got, there's the bare minimum that you can at least do that really you're obligated to do as a band.
I would also
especially if you want people to hang around for you.
I would also like to qualify some of the things that I'm saying. I mentioned earlier, there's an extremely negative voice in my head. I'm not going to shows thinking this about people, but whenever it's happening to me and I'm up on stage being like, oh, sorry, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
I got a Bigsby and I'm having to put this in drop D now. And all of the other strings are I'm going to have to tune it 3 times. So just please bear with me. The voice in my head is screaming like, these people are not here for your personality. Like you're creeping people out. Like, get a loop pedal, get a delay that does 7 seconds and then noodle into it. And then don't say anything. Like I said, I've seen lots of people do it to great effect. But just, I can't look at myself in the mirror and hear that voice and not try to do something.
It's like you're up there trying to be fucking Mickey Rooney or something in between takes. So you told us that a new single is coming up on the 27th. You're setting yourself to, not too much pressure. Right?
Yeah, and the reason I picked that day is it's Friday, and I don't know. Is it like I just been releasing things on Friday
because seem to be kind of what they're doing in music. Like Kendrick Lamar's new album comes out tomorrow.
Now is this a thing just because of Release Radar, or did this exist before streaming?
I think that streaming has pushed it in that direction because I think I remember a time, and I could be wrong about this, that music came out on a Tuesday, typically new music.
Yeah.
And I think that shifted to Thursday, and now it's Friday in most cases. I mean, I think there's still some bands that follow some of the tradition release
Some people
routes,
just do it whenever,
But when you're somebody, that's a bad example technically that I use Kendrick Lamar. You can do what the fuck you want. But,
exactly.
Or J. Cole.
But it seems like there's Friday is the day to do it. So I don't know why that is, but I was just like, well, I have to, I have to jump off the cliff with everybody else. So Friday. But
if I was to try and think of a reason though, my reasoning would be, okay, well, what's happening on Fridays? You're getting out of the 9 to 5. You're going to go hang out with friends. You're going to have this song on the background.
Or you don't have a job or shit to do.
And you want to give getting high.
Right. We all saw the movie and we know what happens on Fridays.
Yep. Absolutely.
Certainly not in my house.
No, none of these good God-fearing boys' house at this table right here, right now.
Well, so it's the last Friday of the month, but it's also the day before a show. And
it's the weekend before Memorial Day as well. So that's a big party weekend.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is before Memorial.
Weekend. Cool.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
cool. I didn't take that into consideration.
He did it on purpose, folks. We're gonna edit that out.
Well, so
he's a mastermind.
We played one show. We've played one show since the start of the pandemic. Have you at that?
Yeah.
That was the one with Sea Shine's release video thing. We had another one scheduled with this awesome fucking band. Then the Omicron spike happened and it was gnarly. So all the other bands pulled out, and then we were just Logan works in a restaurant, and so he definitely is gonna give people the coronavirus, and I can't go around with that on my conscience. So we had to back out. So we played one show since the pandemic happened, and so this will be the second one and also the first one since we've released.
It's that same weekend. Is that on the 28th?
It's the 28th, yeah. So it's the very next day.
That's another interesting thing that we didn't touch on, and I've talked to every artist that's been on the show, regardless of their practice, is how COVID has affected their musical output, their creativity. What did you guys do in that downtime too to help keep producing or writing music or getting together, what did that look like during COVID for you guys? Because there wasn't, obviously, especially in St. Louis, live music really going on.
For
some period
for sure.
of time.
I mean, St. Louis was more, it seemed like lockdown and much quicker to lockdown than, even like Columbia, or there's no getting together during that time. So a couple of years ago, Logan and I left Columbia. Logan and I were living together in the house where I had the studio, and we were practicing a couple times a week. Even like it was the most we've consistently practiced as a band, because it was just very easy to. And then I had to get out of the service industry. There were like two places to be a developer in Columbia. So I moved to St. Louis, where the job market for developers is crazy. So with the acknowledgement that like we're gonna have to really make an effort to even be a band, and like maybe this is the end of it being like a thing we take seriously, and maybe it's just the thing we do. We get together and run through the songs just for the for old time's sake. Probably never play shows, probably done releasing music, or we put in the work to like make an effort to drive to practices and play shows still. And we did, we kind of did it. We played a few shows, and they were good shows even, but it was like a lot of driving to Columbia, and it was very difficult to write new music, and it was very difficult to stay tight and to feel much connection with it at all, or to see a future. And so we had this album that we've been working on forever, and I just kind of stopped. I also didn't have time. I was like, I moved to a new place. This is the first time in my life I've worked like 40 plus hours a week, because I was like a waiter, and you have these short, brutal shifts for a good payout. This is the salary job where you're, so it is a lot of your fucking time. Right. It might be less than like crazy intense, but it is a lot of your time. So like, I just didn't have time to think about music, or at least not at that point. I had to get on my feet. Yeah. Same for Logan. So we kind of shelved this thing for a couple of years, and then the pandemic started, and like, I'm writing a lot, I'm recording a lot, not necessarily stuff that would work for the band, or like maybe I showed it to Mike and Logan, and they were like, that's cool. And I just kind of felt like they don't really like this, so I'm going to keep this to myself. But then one day I was like, I'm going to pull open these Enemy Airship project files and just see like, where are they even at? And some of them I was like, this is fucking trash. I mean, there's like a whole 5-6 songs that were going to be on this record that are just like shelved or thrown away completely. But there's some really good stuff in it. And I was like, I'm going to start working on this. I've got nothing else to do. Yeah. So then I started working on it again, and thinking like, oh, we're actually going to release this. And then finally Michael moved to St. Louis, and we had a place to practice, because my place is not good for practicing, and my cat can't stand that shit. So we finally had a place to practice again. And so we've been like, I don't know, this feels like a new chapter, I guess. Not even just that we've been releasing stuff, but just like we had to kind of go through this phase of hibernation and like change in all of our lives, and then come back together and decide who we are is different now, how we live is different, like what we do with music. And like Michael in that time joined Blight's is awesome, and like Michael's bass playing is evolved in the way that it only can if you're in a couple of disparate projects that are that are stylistically different. He grew a lot, and like we've all kind of gone through this couple years, even before COVID, just the distance of like painful growth separately. And we had to come back together and decide like, is this even a coherent thing anymore? And luckily it is. And like, in some ways it's the least dysfunctional our band has ever been.
You're
the path
kind of
forward
tapping into different creative channels though with that approach too, like, because it has altered who you are.
For sure. I mean, it's also, Logan and I lived together for a long time. Yeah. And so it was this kind of, we're living the same life, or we're living a lot. We're living like together. Duplicity. We're around each other all the time. I know where you're coming from all the time. And now it's like, I'm alone a lot, which is probably for the best, you know. And I do well in solitude, not isolation. Solitude is
right.
You know, I choose to be alone a lot of the time because I need to be a little goblin and do my thing. And so there's not this obligatory like I got to walk by you whenever I go to take a shit or something.
Yeah.
Like, so whenever we come together, it's like whenever we connect, it's intentional. It is
right.
because we want to, and it's like. I think some of that too is like just.
Well, you don't take your relationship for granted
exactly,
as much too.
Exactly. Sure. I don't personally. I don't take the band. I don't think I ever took it for granted, but it's like, it is a thing that I know that I need to cherish, and it's a thing that I have to work to hold on to, and to keep healthy. And there is a lot of work to do and to be done, but it's worth it, and it's different because I've chosen it against odds that I didn't necessarily face before. And it's the same way with our friendships too, and it's the same with all friendships as you get older, but I think that is maybe evident in what we do now just as a band. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, you know. It's all good. But I sure won't stop talking.
Well, let's plug where the show's at on the 27th, because that's our 28th. Excuse me, that's only a few weeks away.
It is at Heavy Anchor.
So at Heavy Anchor
in St. Louis.
That's a good venue. I enjoyed.
Yeah, I like Heavy Anchor.
Experience there.
It is with Daytime Television, which is a sweet Columbia band, and then Boxcar, another sweet Columbia band.
Okay.
So we've never played with either of the bands, but I know the people in Daytime Television. I don't actually know the people in Boxcar. I've just heard them. So
yeah,
gonna be a good show. Every time that we play a show, like I have like horrific panic disorder.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so I've been doing this since I was 14 years old, and I never don't have a panic attack. So I'm soliciting some beta blockers. If anyone wants to DM me, get a hold of me on Facebook, Messenger, or Instagram, and it has a connect on beta blockers. And look, you know, maybe you lace it with fentanyl and I die and don't even have to play this show.
Well, let's avoid that.
Don't do that. Don't
stay away from the fentanyl.
Don't murder me. Wink.
So
wink.
speaking of getting at you, talk about where people can get at Enemy Airship, hear the music.
I think it's Enemy Airship. Hold on a second.
EnemyAirship.bandcamp.com.
Yeah. I think Enemy Airship music or just Enemy Airship.
We're going to plug all your social media stuff at the end of the show, too.
I'm so bad with that.
That's all good.
Yeah,
But if you just go to Google and type in Enemy Airship Bandcamp, it's the first listing.
All this stuff is on Spotify, too. Yeah. And I think so we go through DistroKid, which, I think probably everybody's going through either DistroKid. TuneCore is the other one. DistroKid puts it on like Apple Music and Amazon and I think YouTube as well. So it's on a bunch of stuff. Spotify, of course.
Right.
So it's anywhere you'd want to hear it, you can.
Right.
I think
Bandcamp.
Yeah, it's on Shazam. If you overhear
Shazam,
someone listening to it, I think
good.
Shazam will tell you that it is.
So if you I know you're listening to the episode now, when you hear the clips that we have and it's their music, you can still Shazam it if you want.
Yeah,
and we can put this theory to the test.
It should work. It ought to work. Otherwise, somebody owes me a refund.
So as I mentioned, we are going to be playing some clips from Enemy Airship. You've heard it prior to the interview and post the interview, and then we're going to have a full-length song here. But Zach, it was a pleasure having you on the show today. I appreciate your time. I'm glad the conversation went in other areas that was not predicted whatsoever. It made for a very entertaining talk.
I can't imagine someone like listening to this and not being like, this guy.
Questioning their existence.
Jesus, this guy won't shut up. What the fuck is he talking about? But yeah, sorry guys.
No.
But no. We were so happy.
Still freaking out about robots.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
we'll lose some I can dreams. Pull it up.
Yeah. Let's see your robot creation.
I can't wring this grudge from my hands, so I'm holding on as tight as I can to the years rolling past us, cloud by cloud. Face collects the lines and I read them all aloud. Well, the compass can't move, so the pen don't rest. But as soon as it does, you're gonna fly out west. Are you stable sun goes down on the other house.
Thank you all for sticking around after the break. Thanks again to Brady Kurt of Brady's Jiu-Jitsu Club in Fredericktown, Missouri for his appearance last week on episode 13. Biggest feedback that I've received for last week's episode is how genuine and incredibly nice of a guy Brady came off as. I hope it translates into new enrollees for Brady. We've got a lot of Brady's details out there on our social media feeds, and they were given at the close of the episode 13. If you're interested in checking out some jiu-jitsu, recommend getting on it and getting with Brady. Next week, we have Marcus Newstead of Pfister, Daybringer, Path of Might, formerly McCree, Last Flight Home, for episode 15. Looking really forward to talking to Marcus. I've known Marcus for a long time on the show about what he has going on currently and some of the things that he's done historically. Kind of get some people caught up with where Marcus is at today and what he has in store for this year. Thank you to Zach once again for joining the show today. Find Enemy Airship on Bandcamp, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Anywhere you get your audio content, folks. As always, here on ATI Podcasts, we like to persuade you to go toward Bandcamp. You can find Enemy Airship on Bandcamp. It is enemyairship.bandcamp.com. You can also follow Enemy Airship on social media. They're on Instagram and Twitter, as well as Facebook. At Enemy Airship Music on Instagram, at Enemy Airship on Twitter, and Facebook.com/Enemy Airship. Like, follow, subscribe to their posts so you can stay up to date with them, their events, their shows that they have going on. Please check out Enemy Airship. Of course, we've played Enemy Airship during the breaks today, so you've gotten a little bit of a teaser, and we're going to be closing the show today with Enemy Airship's single, New Tanuki Suit. I also must thank Ridge Jackson for joining the show this week. Ridge stepped up to fill the void of co-host this week while Josh was out with an illness. We appreciate you, Ridge, for hopping on at the last minute and helping us out with the show today. You, of course, heard Ridge previously on our Jonestown episode, which was episode 11. If you didn't check that out, it's a bit of a marathon, but it is an interesting listen and gives you the backstory of Jonestown, so go back and check that out. And of course, we're going to have Ridge back on in the future when we hit some more on our Cults, Conspiracies, and Killers series. I have to also say, get well, Josh. We will see you back next week to fight the good fight once again. Special thanks to Ben Sharp of Cloud Kicker for lending us his song, You and Yours, from the album Let Yourself Be Huge, for the ATI Podcast Open. You can follow Cloud Kicker on Bandcamp, as well as Instagram and Facebook. Check out Cloud Kicker if you like his stuff. Get his merch, get his vinyls, download his music. Ben's got an incredible catalog out there. Check out Cloud Kicker. I am Barry Insane on Instagram and Twitter. And for this week, we are out of time. Until next time, good night and good luck to you all. Here's Enemy Airship.
To
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.